Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and tonight we are talking with Amarda Shehu. She is the Vice President and the Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer for George Mason University, the inaugural AI Vice President and Chief as of 2024. Thank you so much for being here, Amarda.
Thank you for having me.
I think artificial intelligence is top of mind for everyone, even people who are like, I'm not even sure what it is. Everybody's talking about it, and it seems that artificial intelligence is threatening jobs. It's making people anxious. People feel like it could replace them. And so in the midst of all of this, you have taken on this job for George Mason University to try to help bring understanding, I would imagine, to what this field is. But I guess to start with, let's help people understand how you came to this field, which suddenly seems to have popped up out of the earth with no notice. I'm sure that's not the case. Help us understand what your journey has been to this role.
Right. First, very happy to be here, very glad to be here and to have this opportunity to maybe demystify some things about AI. I'll give you the short version of the journey. I tell folks that I've been a researcher, so developing AI technologies back when nobody cared, back when you could be in a lab and not be bothered, and you didn't have all the publicity and the hype that we have nowadays. But my journey started, I was just more interested in math, in that aspect of things, and I also liked biology, so I learned about how people were putting together sort of rules to mimic life, to model molecules, proteins, DNA, and understand what our cells were doing. And we would call it back then, this was a portion of artificial intelligence, because we were designing algorithms that could make rational decisions, right? That could be intelligence, but they were not human. So we called that artificial intelligence.
What year was that?
Okay, so without dating myself.
Don't have to date yourself. But like what era are we talking about?
Right, so we were talking about the early 2000s.
Okay.
I obtained my PhD from Rice University in 2008. This was at the height of the housing crash, remember that?
Right, I do,
we went
yes.
through that. And one of the few universities in the country that was still hiring academics for entry-level professor positions, tenure-track positions, was George Mason University. So I came from Texas to Virginia, to George Mason, and I started as a tenure-track assistant professor in AI. And sort of I went through the ranks. I became an associate professor. Then I decided to take a bit of a break, and I went to the National Science Foundation here because I wanted to kind of see the landscape of what other academics, other researchers were doing across the nation, and what could I do to influence national priorities, what should we be doing in AI. At the time, data science was big.
Right.
So I participated, I led a program that put together a data science education solicitation to kind of incentivize academics across the country to integrate data science education in every discipline, which is very reminiscent of what we're talking about now with AI. Then I went back to Mason. They put me in charge of an institute, the Institute for Digital Innovation, and I couldn't escape what I was doing. So I kept talking about AI. And then, you know what they say, when you do a good job, they pull you and give you more work. So the president then pulled me aside and said, hey, you've been talking about this thing for a while, and I've been listening, and I've been going around the country, and AI seems to be coming up big. I would like you to be the chief AI officer of George Mason University. We had a couple of sort of back and forth negotiations because there's no job manual that tells you what this job should be about.
True.
And I had some ideas about what I wanted to do, and he had his own ideas, so we developed those together. And that's how I became the inaugural Vice President and Chief AI Officer at George Mason University. I am an AI researcher, so I have an active lab. Folks may have heard about ChatGPT and Claude,
Yes.
all right? So in my lab, we design similar methods, but we don't have the same resources as the big tech companies. So we try to design more intelligent systems that don't use so much power and so much energy, because again, I keep saying we're not the big tech companies. I'm an educator, so I design courses, and hopefully we can get a little bit into that. And I'm also a chief AI officer trying to determine what should be the strategy across the university. What should we be doing in AI?
So you've touched on so many things here that we will unpack as the evening goes on. But one of the interesting things about education is the emergence of STEM education. You know, and talking about how STEM, earlier and earlier, we need to introduce science, technology, engineering, and math. And so this seems to be tracking, when you think about who is sitting in our universities now, whether or not this generation were the ones that were like, we need to focus on STEM. You know, I don't know if there's a correlation as far as the young people you see in the university today. What do you think their level of understanding is, or the emphasis when they came to the university on, maybe it wasn't called artificial intelligence, but just this emphasis that we all need to know more about science, technology, engineering, and math?
Right, yes. So definitely the focus was not single-handedly artificial intelligence. I would say from my perspective, a lot of the focus was, I would call it democratizing computing for everyone, or broadening participation in computing. So I was a very big believer of that. A very interesting phenomenon in the United States is that you don't have a lot of women in computing even to this day. You don't have a lot of minorities. There's a certain demographic profile for the students that naturally end up in computing, and I think we're still debating what are the reasons for that and what can we do about that. That's a conversation we've had, I believe, in the past decades, right? And it keeps coming up in different shapes and forms. But definitely the folks that you find now that have sort of these positions are the folks that I say they succeeded. They made it, right? For whatever reason, either their parents believed in STEM, or they were drawn to STEM, or they had a wonderful teacher, right? Never underestimate the role of a wonderful teacher. I had wonderful teachers that really made me very inquisitive and very curious and very passionate about math and about computing, and gave me courage also when I didn't have the background as everybody else, right? So folks will find this very funny, but actually I think I have a distinction. There are a lot of now chief AI officers in the country, but I am probably the chief AI officer who, the first time I turned on a computer and saw a computer and touched it with my hands was probably at 18 years old, because I grew up. So I say this to kids, I'm like, don't worry about it. If you feel that I don't have that background, I don't have that exposure, life can take you in a, you've got a very long time. You have time to make up for it. I didn't grow up with computers. I never received any training in computers. I just was brave enough to say, I can get into this. So, and I think that's the spirit that we want, right? So maybe the folks that we have now are not necessarily the folks that, believed in STEM, but the folks that were brave and courageous and wanted to do something, wanted to participate in computing. Now, whether they focus specifically in AI or in other areas of computing or more broadly engineering, I think that's a different manner. That's a different thing we can discuss, yeah.
Well, we were talking a little bit about this before the show, that nobody took a class on how to use a smartphone.
Right.
Like we all use a smartphone, even kids. I see them in grocery stores in the cart on somebody's phone playing games, and they're toddlers. And so clearly, no one's taking a class to figure out all the power that exists in a smartphone. And yet we all use it. Back in the day when social media was new, because I taught people how to use social media back in the day, I have some regrets about that, but anyway, older people would say, I'm too old to learn this. And I would say, really? Well, let me tell you, pictures of your grandchildren are on Facebook. So guess what? Older people now are the only people who are on Facebook, but it came down to motivation.
Yes.
It is not our capacity to learn new things. It is how motivated are we? What is the end game that we want so that we will learn these new technologies? So when people understood the power of their smartphone, they learned how to text, and they learned how to look for apps and how to use the apps, and they learned how to do all these things because there was an end game. There was a goal that they wanted. It was not about anybody's capacity to learn something new. And so I think at this point, AI is looking scary to people because it's unfamiliar. But just like with everything else, from social media to smartphones, I still believe that if people understand how they can use it to achieve something that matters to them, that is really the key. That's what we need to unlock.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point that you make, and I kept going back and thinking, what was it for my grandparents' generation, right? Did somebody teach them how to use a radio? Did somebody teach them how to use a washer and dryer, right? My grandma didn't have a washer and dryer until very late in her life, right? Did somebody teach them how to use a computer? Why suddenly people found the value of the computer? Because they wanted to be connected, right? And then you went to social media, the internet, the social media, again, people wanted to be connected, right? And the smartphone gave you a completely new way of being connected, right? Like an exponential increase. And now you think about AI, the question that we're trying to understand is, what is it that it is unlocking? Because it is unlocking a lot of very interesting applications, a lot of very interesting new capabilities. And some of those we're learning every day. So maybe this is what's making us a little bit uncomfortable, because we're not geared evolutionarily to like the unknown, right? Or to welcome the unknown. The unknown is a little bit scary, right? Where I'm comfortable here where I am. I don't want to be made uncomfortable. And every new thing will make you uncomfortable. But what I hope, and this was my message too when I was asked to prepare a message for the George Mason University members, faculty and staff and students, and I said, don't let other people's experiences inform you. Let your own experiences inform you, and let's come together and let's figure out the right environment in which we use these tools. We're going to learn together, and if at the end of the day, it is your decision. You will say whether you find value or you don't find value. So this is something that resonates with me, and it's a very astute point that you're making. A colleague of mine that I have in New York, he wants to convince people that AI is the normal technology. Think of it as the normal technology, and there's something to be said about that, right? Because when you say it's a normal technology, it's just like another technology, you suddenly become a little bit less afraid, right? You're more likely to try to approach it and try to figure out how to make it work. Yeah.
Right, but I think people are also reluctant because we have stories about the veracity, the truthfulness of some of the stuff that AI brings back. So it's not like we're used to Googling things and we kind of trust the results, although we probably shouldn't always, because a lot of those are paid for. But anyway, we trust the results, and I think AI has brought into the forefront, should we always trust what AI says? And I have a very funny story about my sister's book club that should tell people don't always believe, because Ted didn't die in the book. So if you didn't read the book and you relied on that, probably not a good idea to always rely on the results from AI.
Okay.
So anyway, when we come back, we are talking with Amarda Shehu, and she is the inaugural Chief AI Officer at George Mason University. Join us after the break.
So, I just moved in with this family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that. That's disgusting. Oh, poop already. You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.
So how was work?
It was 1,300 hours. My math class from 302 was in the trenches. Davy Roth had it the worst. Fractions were coming at him left and right. He just didn't get the damn things. 2 days ago, I tried to teach him what 1/4 of 1/2 was using different sizes of blocks. Yesterday, I tried again by dividing up pizza. Both missions failed.
Oh, no.
But today, I was ready. I created a combat math game where the only way to beat the enemy is to out-fraction them. Davy conquered every last denominator. My game was so successful, the principal is deploying it to math squadrons all over the school.
Anywho, how was your day?
Oh, today my boss treated the office to salad wraps.
Salad wraps.
I know.
150 over 90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and tonight we are talking about AI with Amarda Shehu from George Mason University. So when we went to the break, I kind of mentioned something about a book club and the fact that my sister hosted a book club where apparently someone did not finish reading the book. And so during the discussion about the book, this person said, but what about when Ted died? And my sister's like, Ted didn't die. She's like, but I thought, no, Ted didn't die, which kind of revealed her as someone who had not read the book. Right. So, I think it's a funny story, but it also talks a little bit about people even at this early stage who are relying on, whether it's ChatGPT or something else, to deliver them something truthful or factual. Yeah. It doesn't always help us understand the role of chatbots or how people are using them or what kind of information and how that information is actually delivered to somebody.
All right. So that's a very funny story, by the way, and I'll try to tell it around the dinner table. But Ted didn't die because it completely illustrates the danger of hallucinations. So that is a very clear example of these chatbots hallucinating, making up facts. So I teach a class at Mason. I started a new thing. I wanted to introduce all our undergraduates, freshmen, whatever, any discipline, humanities, English, no STEM background, no coding, didn't like math, whatever, but you want to understand what AI is, and we learned by doing. So we learned by using these and evaluating, and we also learned about some of the technologies. So it's very important, I think, for folks to understand that AI does not equal chatbots. AI is much bigger than chatbots. So everybody use Outlook or, Gmail, right? And there is a method in the background, an algorithm in the background that classifies or labels a message as spam or not spam, right? And puts that automatically in the junk folder or clutter folder or spam folder. All right, that's an example of an AI. It is an intelligent algorithm that's making a decision. It has been trained over data, over emails labeled as spam versus not spam, sort of in a laboratory setting. And then when it's deployed, when it is added as a sort of as a plugin to your email inbox, then it's making decisions in real time. Is it 100% accurate? No. Right?
No, it's not.
Sometimes I'm like, where is that email?
Check your spam folder.
Check your spam folder, folks, right? So that's not accurate. It's not 100%, but do we find utility out of it? Yes, we do, right? So we care about a lot of accuracy, but we know that it's not 100% accurate. Now that's AI, but it's something that we call predictive AI because it's making a prediction. Is it spam or not? And there's a huge area of AI it's very promising, but it's actually not getting the PR that it needs because we're just talking about chatbots. But I want to talk about some of the real things. Breast cancer detection.
Wow.
Okay, so we have now very powerful algorithms, very intelligent algorithms. We can debate what intelligent means, but for the sake of the argument, let's say very rational, very powerful algorithms that can be trained over images, MRI images or X-ray images. And they are shown, for instance, hundreds of thousands of images labeled with breast cancer type 1, type 2, whatever the subtype is. They pick up the patterns, and they find the correlation between the patterns in the images. Is it this line? Is it this edge? Is it this combination of characteristics in the image that I can correlate with this type or with that type? And then when deployed, meaning when applied to data that are not labeled, they are helping pathologists make decisions. Here in the US, we have some in hospitals. In Europe, they are more widespread. They have a crazy high accuracy rate. And so that's a clear example of another that's a version of predictive AI that holds a lot of promise for the future of health. I remember back when I was at NSF, I was in charge of the RAPID program, so where we were mobilizing the scientific community to help. And one of the projects that I remember we funded at NSF was to predict whether these X-ray images were COVID lungs, or not COVID lungs, pneumonia, but some other kind of, right? So we have a lot of these algorithms that are very powerful, that are helping doctors triage, make decisions. Is this acute kidney injury? Do we need to pay attention right now? Or this can wait, right? These are real impactful decisions. And what we're talking about these days, mostly, the chatbots are not that kind. They're not predictive. They're not making predictions. They are generating, right? So that's generative AI. And what are they generating? They're generating text. You put a prompt and you ask, what was the rest of that book about? And it said, Ted died. Okay. Or you say, okay, I want to design a logo for my business, right? Or I want an image of all my pets, right? Because I'm creating maybe a Christmas photo that I want to send around to all my relatives, right? Or I want to create a short 10-second video of me dressed up like in the Middle Ages, saying something or saying out Macbeth monologue. Like people are doing this these days, right? So these are forms of generative AI because these are algorithms that have been trained to over text or over images or over videos, and they have learned how to mimic the patterns in the data in order to produce new data that looks like the data that they have been trained on. So I keep saying looks like, so they mimic, they're mimickers, right? So you can think of a parrot. A parrot, that's a very powerful parrot. But occasionally a parrot will say things that sound eloquent, but they're not grounded in reality, like Ted died. Right? Yeah. So I have colleagues in the community that call chatbots stochastic parrots. They mean that they're parrots because they've learned to mimic modalities. They learn to mimic language fluently or images or videos. Sometimes they mimic, they create new molecules. Those are the more interesting applications to me. But they're very probabilistic in nature. Think of it as 90% of the time they might say something that makes sense, but there's a percentage of the time when you're looking at it and like, yeah, no. What's more dangerous is when you don't understand that what it's saying is not grounded in reality. So again, I keep going back to the spam. A percentage of the time, it will make mistakes. That's where we are with these tools. So a very important component at Mason, and for me, is to teach students AI literacy, to let them understand that these are very powerful tools. They're very eloquent. They will allow you to do a lot of very cool things now. But please keep in mind that you have to be on top. You have to exercise your own judgment because you're not interacting with a human. Right? You're interacting with a great mimicker. This is not the real thing, but it's a very powerful mimicker. And you find a lot of very good use cases, but please always exercise your judgment and always have your human oversight.
That makes absolute sense. And my husband, who's an attorney, has learned to ask for information or formatting simply so that he can look at what it offers. But what he knows as an attorney is what is right and what is wrong.
Exactly.
So he can verify whatever the results are as to whether they are actually accurate, which has just been very interesting for him as somebody who's just looking at what AI can do for how you can use it to see if what is out there is actually the accurate information if you're searching for something.
Yeah.
So, and I heard somebody speak at Matthew House. We had a bunch of people speak about AI, and that what really stuck me from the speakers is that if you are a subject matter expert, go out and look for what AI is returning for certain kinds of prompts, because you will know if it is not right. Ted didn't die. So yeah. AI needs to be informed. Ted doesn't die.
And that's the paradox right now, that experts at this moment are finding more value out of these tools because they know how to phrase the question. They know what to look for, right? They know how to evaluate what they obtain. If you're not an expert, and you ask a question, there's a little bit more arbitrariness right now in these systems into what they return to you, and you certainly may not have the judgment to determine whether the output or what you obtain is actually useful. And so we may say, oh, these are amazing tools, but when I actually evaluate them, they're not quite ready yet. They are very good if you have a lot of expertise, but they're not very good if you don't have a lot of expertise. We call that the jagged edge. So they are quite curious technologies that sometimes wow us, and sometimes how can that be so naive, right? You don't believe, how can that failure mode occur? I think we will get into more mature technologies. We're not there right now, despite what you may be hearing, in the news right. from the big tech companies. They're there to sell something, right? They're selling a product. But I do believe that they will get to a stage where even, let's call them novices, will find a lot of value out of them.
So I'm a member of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, and we had a very interesting presentation on artificial intelligence and how it's being used in municipal government. And the fact of the matter is, it's really not. In fact, only 29% of the jurisdictions in COG have a policy around AI. It's very new. But he gave us examples of how they tried to create what he called like a playground or a sandbox for the employees to try prompts like they all named a turtle together, just starting out. But one of the ones that was really captured my imagination was a group project that they used a platform and said, we've got this much money and this much time, plan a trip to New York City. And so it came back with this itinerary of what you could do with this amount of money and this amount of time in New York City. But then one of the people in the group, who was very pregnant, changed the prompt to say, what would you do in New York City if you're 8 months pregnant? And it came back with a different itinerary. To me, these are examples of helping people to understand not only what you can do with AI or trying to identify a goal, what it is you want to achieve, but then understanding that a different prompt or refining what it is or how you're asking it gives you different results. And so he was saying that and he's from, I think, Houston, Texas. He was from Houston. It's a really great presentation, but it was really trying to break it down and make it more accessible. So they have 3 platforms that their employees can use, these 3 different utilities for AI that they can use it only on their government devices and these platforms, but helping them to understand the ways in which they can use it for whatever they're doing. And to me, the approach was amazing, which is why I'm sure they had him as a speaker for COG, is that it made it like we can do this. Yeah. We can do this. So in an academic setting, I understand what you're trying to do in an academic setting, but all of this now has to translate to, if you're a municipal government, what does this mean if you haven't even thought about what your policies are?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. We actually started with policy, believe it or not, at Mason. So our goal, one of our goals was to integrate AI in our operations, in our back office, the day-to-day work, and see what value our staff could find out of it. So we did have it as an end goal to build one of the sandboxes that you mentioned, and we did build one in partnership with Microsoft. But as part of that process, while we were building it, we also started thinking about, well, what's our policy? What should we tell people to do? And what should we maybe say not now? And maybe what should we say not ever? All right, yeah. And so we called it responsible use of AI. And it's actually not a new thing. Every university has a responsible use of computing. Right? And they say, you can't use it to bully, you can't use it to create viruses, like you can't do like all these things, right? You have to be in compliance. So we started there with a policy that we borrowed from responsible use of computing.
Well, we're going to talk more about policy because policy drives the responsible use of almost everything, including cars and things we use every day. There has to be a policy and restrictions and rules. So when we come back, we will be talking with Amarda Shehu about artificial intelligence. Please join us after the break.
Mom, I got it. What are you doing in there?
I got stuff.
Oh. Are you a dog?
I wouldn't do that. Have you seen the pliers? Where'd you find those?
It's not your birthday.
Sorry.
Bye, Grandpa.
Bye, Grandpa.
Take care of yourself.
What are you doing? What are you looking for?
Let me tell you about the toughest guy on earth. He does the work of 2 jobs, but only gets paid for one. He's tough enough to feed the man that gave him a lifetime of nourishment. He has the crazy strength to lift the man that raised him up without even flinching. That's right, no employee of the month bonus check here. This guy, no. This warrior will always be by his father's side, even if his dad will hardly remember. Good luck finding a gym to train for that. If this guy isn't the toughest guy on the planet, then I don't know who is. Caregiving is tougher than tough. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and tonight we are talking with Amarda Shehu from George Mason University about artificial intelligence. So when we went to break, you were talking about the policies that the university has put into place for responsible use, and that is not just artificial intelligence, it's computer usage. Let's expand that a little bit. I'm talking about municipal government, and municipal government is trying to understand what kind of policies or guidelines. But on a much larger level, the General Assembly is going into session 2. They'll start their session in January, having to look at in the broader context, how do we keep people, consumers, safe when you have these powerful tools that can create images of all your dogs for a Christmas card, but it can also create deep fakes or videos or mimic people or their voices or create events that never happened. And I think one of the things we're looking at least for one piece of legislation, is just having to disclose that as a way of keeping the public safe.
Yeah. Well, we did that. So one of our policies was, we're not discouraging you, and by you we mean faculty, staff, students, to create images that you may want, illustrations to drive a point across, maybe in your project or in your lecture, right, or in a memo that you're putting together. But you have to disclose that you used, and we went a little bit further. We asked people to disclose what tool did they use and what time of day it was. Was it 2024, March 23rd, and why is that important? That's very important because we're operating in a little bit of, you said your husband is a lawyer, right? We're operating in a somewhat hazy moment. We have active copyright lawsuits, right, that actors or artists have launched against some of the big tech companies. And those are still being litigated. Those are still being ongoing. So what is now uncertain or unsure, maybe will not. Maybe what our usage might be considered now it's a little bit uncertain, but maybe later it will not be, because depending on the way that the courts go. So we really want to make sure that folks declare their usage. They're very transparent about it. Transparency is one of the pillars in our policy. We're not discouraging folks from using, but we want them to be very transparent. And to me, this is actually deeply personal. I'll give you a story because you gave me the TED story. So my daughter likes to watch these these beautiful cakes that they make with really amazing ornaments, right? And she used to love those. But then in the past year, I've noticed whenever I say, hey, let's for something to kind of relax, chill at the end of the day, she's like, they're all fake. They're all Gen AI. They're all generated with AI. She doesn't believe them anymore. Wow. And so something has happened, right? And I felt very sad about that as well. You have to be able to trust some information, right? We can go from one extreme to another, trusting everything or trusting nothing, and none of them is really in a healthy place. So we have to figure out a mechanism that allows us to know we trust this because, or we don't trust this because. So I do believe that transparency is key. Deep fakes, they can be really, we have examples of them being detrimental for kids, girls of a certain age, right? I have 2 girls, so I'm very sensitive to that issue. Maybe fake audio, right? We have examples of that, people utilizing this. There are, with any powerful technology, there are all kinds of ways that they can be used for not really good purposes, right? Because humans are creative. They will do what they've always done, right? But we need to make sure that we say, here are the boundaries, here are the lines in the sand, here is responsible use, and here is what's not responsible use. And I do believe we can figure that out, but I hope that we have, a few sort of forward-looking folks that are thinking about what is the right mechanism. I do want the tech companies to want to figure this out. They're waiting for some leadership, so I hope that there will be leaders that will step up.
So people think of academia as being this thing that's contained on a campus, but actually you exist to inform people in the world for how to do things, whether it's policy or it's something technical, because it's already arrived. And you're right, big tech companies are putting products out there, but that is a business model. They're trying to sell us something.
Right.
And so academia has a different purpose, which is to help us better understand and inform and responsibly use things. So what are you doing at the university right now where you're trying to put the research that you're doing out there in the world for whether it's governments or it's the healthcare field or it's to use what it is that you are creating on the campus?
Yeah, so I'm actually very privileged to be in a public university. Public university is very different, I believe, from a private university because you're very aware that you exist to serve the region, right? You are important to the community, we're important to Northern Virginia, we're important to Virginia, and then we're important to the nation in that order, right? We're educating your kids, so we feel responsible for giving them the right skills so they can participate in the workforce. And then when we look at the macro side of things, we want to make sure that we're catalyzing that economic engine of the region, right? So there are things that we're doing internally to prepare our students, and that's where I'm actually very proud of George Mason University for being a leader in this space. We are the first university in Virginia that we went forward and we said, even 2 years ago, about 3 years ago, nobody was talking about AI, and we created an undergraduate minor in ethics and AI. Nobody was paying attention. Just last year, we launched a new master's degree program in AI, where basically what we're getting is professionals that want to be reskilled. They want to have a new master's degree. We have opened it to anybody with a bachelor's degree in anything quantitative. So if you finished math, finance, data science, anything where you have some quantitative background, so not even computer science background, you can enter the degree program and you can obtain a master's in AI. And that will, I believe there will be a huge return in investment because you will be, I remember you telling me that you were hired in some of your early jobs because you were the only one that you could use a computer, right?
Right, that's
all right,
it.
so this cohort that we'll have will be probably the first cohort that will go through formal training, professional graduate training, and will know what AI is and how to use it. And there will be, we're betting that there will be immensely valuable to them. We have new graduate certificate in responsible AI. We have a Mason core course, the course that I designed and I'm teaching, and I'll teach again in spring, that is opening up to the undergraduate students. We have an entire campaign for how do we integrate AI skills to meet students in the disciplines that they are. We don't want folks to go and be all computer scientists or all engineers. A society needs humanists, right? It needs business leaders, it needs education, teachers, policy people, right?
SHAR School, that
right?
Masters of Public Policy needs some component of AI.
I've talked to some of those students actually. I've given a couple of lectures in some of those classes. So we are going and we're trying to figure out how do we sort of seamlessly integrate AI skills in those disciplines, because the same way that now everybody's expected to use a computer, you will be expected to have some understanding in how to use AI. I think of it like that's going to be the next spreadsheet, right? That's going to be the next Microsoft Word. So it will be an immensely valuable tool for you to be able to be competitive and be successful at your job.
Oh, I think so too. And I love the fact that you're branching out, because I did say that when I was at George Mason University, I took one computer class in Fortran and it was a disaster. I was definitely not cut out for computer programming. But actually, acquiring job skills in computers did get me my first 3 jobs, because computers were brand new and a lot of businesses didn't have them, and they were just learning themselves, and they did not understand what a database was or how to create a report, and I had those skills. But I didn't go to school to learn those skills. I just picked up those skills while I was in school. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's going to be the same with AI too. And I think that students now will have a degree in something, let's say it's public policy, but there will have to be some component where they say, but I know how to use these tools in the parameter of public policy. Because I think right now, I can say in municipal government, we do not have experts on our staff right now, really, who understand how to apply the tools to their greatest effect to achieve what it is we want to do. And it all comes back to what we were saying at the very beginning, which is you have to be motivated by what is it that you're trying to do, and how is this tool going to make it more efficient, better, faster, more efficient, maybe cheaper.
Right. So that's the can-do attitude. And I got a question once from a student. We were at a conference and she said, I am kind of worried about where we are. It seems like a big deal. Things are moving fast, and I feel uncertain about my future. And I said, I sympathize with you. I have kids, so I also think about what will their careers look like. They will be very different from ours. But I told her, you should take solace in the fact that humanity never sits still. We had such a thing as industrial revolution, information revolution, right? Information technology revolution, the electricity, and now we have the AI revolution. Some folks say it's not a revolution, it's something else. Whatever it is, you may call it a disruption, but we've been doing this. We keep doing this, right? Every so often, there's a new technology. Maybe in 10 years, it will be quantum, right? Maybe after that, it will be something else, right? Humanity never sits still. But what I hope that folks will take away is, rather than being afraid, to be curious and to seek out where are the places where you can get this information, right? Where you can get this training so that you can not only remain relevant, but keep growing and keep learning. For me personally, I want to keep getting challenged and I want to learn the new technologies. I am not a fast typer as my kids. They're amazing, right? But I'm not bad. I'm there. Right? So I want to keep learning. I hope that universities like Mason will keep putting together these programs that will not only educate the students to be competitive, the next generation workforce, but we'll also keep engaging with communities. We engage a lot with communities. I have, in my courses, I have folks over 50 years old, very different distribution. They're from the community and they're coming and they're auditing the courses because they want to understand what is this AI thing. And I find that so fun. It's really fun to interact with them. We have relationships with government, with industry. We have various councils, some of the councils that I lead as well. And in those, we're exchanging sort of this know-how, right? Where is it that you have needs? Where are you? What can we do to provide those? What is it? Is it that you need our graduates to have certain skills, or maybe our researchers can come and figure out in one day what you can integrate, how you can change things? Or could we come and maybe provide some literacy for your employees? What are those different? So we're very engaged. We're very much engaged in the community. And that's something that I'm very proud of George Mason University.
Well, you should be. I'm always talking about auditing the courses, which I'm now old enough to do. I didn't realize that I was old enough to do that, but I am, and my neighbors are doing it. So I might have to like sign up for your course in the spring.
I'm teaching it again, yes.
So that I too can understand. But yes, in Fairfax City, and we are right next door to the university, there is an opportunity for people to come and audit the courses. And this is one of the quickest, best, most in-person ways to try to understand what it is we're trying to wrap our arms around, because we are truly trying to wrap our arms around something new, and it seems above our ability to absorb it, but it's not. So we are going to come back after this break to talk more with Amarda Shehu. She is the VP and Chief AI Officer for George Mason University. And when we return, we're going to be talking more about the courses that she is teaching and the courses that she will be teaching. And we want to stay tuned for that, because you might want to be sitting in her classroom too.
Every day across America, excess food is gathered by a network of good people at local food banks, giving hope to millions of children who struggle with hunger. They've earned their wings, and you can too. Together, we can solve child hunger. Support Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
Hi, I'm Josh Temple. You might have seen me on TV where I help folks turn their houses into dream homes. But forget construction. Parenting is the toughest job there is. So when you need help or advice, turn to the parenting experts at Boys Town.
I was afraid of that.
Well, guess it's time to get you fixed.
Your pets will start fooling around sooner than you think.
Go on, get out of here!
Accidental litters lead to millions killed in shelters each year. Help prevent more. Fix at month 4.
Food. It nourishes, brings us together, and adds flavor to life. That's why it's important to wash hands, surfaces, and fresh produce. Keep raw meat, poultry, and seafood separate from ready-to-eat foods like fruits and vegetables. And cook to proper temperatures using a food thermometer. Enjoy, and refrigerate leftovers within 2 hours. For more tips on safely preparing foods, visit homefoodsafety.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and tonight we are talking with Amarda Shehu, who is from George Mason University, and the subject tonight is artificial intelligence, which is at the top of everybody's mind, and yet how do we find out more? And so we were talking when we went to the break about auditing classes, which you can do if you're above a certain age, which I am above that certain age, which would be 60. So when you design the course to be sort of a general introduction to help people understand what it is, to try to put their arms around what we're talking about, how are you going to develop, or how are you developing courses that help people move from a general overview to this is where I need to go next?
Let me talk about the course just a little bit, because the way it's designed, I believe, is very special. I think I hinted earlier that the mode is learn by doing. So I'll give you an example. Homework, was it homework 2 or homework 3? I believe homework 3. Homework 3 was create with AI. So I asked the students, I said, you can use the sandbox environment that we have here at Mason. It's a safe environment. And I want you to, knowing or understanding a little bit under the hood by now, because I've given you the technical understanding, I want you to create something. You can create a poem. You can create a video. You can create a short movie. You can create a song. Whatever it is, surprise me what you can create. One of the students, and then I asked them a bunch of questions. I said, okay, so what did this teach you about the process? Are these things intelligent? How do you feel about it? Do you think you are the creator? You are the author? Are there copyright issues? So all the ethical issues that we had talked about in class, I made them personal, because I said, you went through this experience, so now you have your personal experience. And I found very interesting things. I found students that when they entered the course, they said, well, I am the owner. I'm the creator, and I feel okay about using these tools. And then I had students who had these reflections after they created and said, I'm not sure I'm the creator. I just wrote a very elaborate prompt for this, and I'm not sure I feel okay with claiming ownership. Suddenly, it made it personal, right? And they also understood under the hood how these things behave. So they had that sophistication to be able to give those answers and to advocate, right, for certain answers. I had a student who created a poem from the point of view of Nikola Tesla, railing against electric vehicles, and for that he used grok. For those of you that know, you'll get the irony of this, and I thought it was absolutely wicked. So I gave the students complete freedom, but I asked them just, now I want you to reevaluate everything that we have learned in this course, the ethical, societal implications, now you put them in context. So that is the spirit of the course. You will learn by doing. Things will not be theoretical to you. You will have enough information, enough sophistication that your answers are grounded in both understanding and your personal experiences. And I'm a very strong believer of these types of courses. Now, our goal is to scale this course. So I've been teaching, I taught it in the fall, and I'm going to teach it again in the spring, but our goal is to take this and to replicate it across the colleges and to reach hundreds of undergraduates. And then from there to think about what's next. I already have students that are loving this course. Even some of the folks that are auditing the course are like, okay, so what's next? And I said, well, we're getting there. Like, okay, but like, we're finishing this, so what do we do next? And they're giving me all kinds of ideas. One of them, for instance, said, can you put for me an information packet with all the resources, anything that I need to go to my next journey? They're not waiting for us. They're already, like, they want to go. And to me, that is the best example of success. So we will definitely keep moving in that direction. We're building, I call it a ladder of skills and competencies, right? This is just the entrance, the entry door. And we want to make sure that the students are able to grow in their sophistication and in their skills. But what we want to do is make sure that they do that without having to become computer scientists, that they do that remaining civil engineers, that they do that remaining English majors, right? And so that is, I think, something that will be very special and very unique at George Mason. I have a lot of examples for this course. On this Wednesday, the students are organizing themselves in teams. They're operating some as nonprofits and some as startups, and they are pitching problems and solutions. They're giving presentations in front of leaders I have invited from industry, from nonprofits and education, and these leaders are there to serve as investors. So they're going to grill the students, they're going to ask them, and the students are all like excited and anxious, and I told them, this is your final exam. This is your final project. So they're even getting experience with entrepreneurship, with translation, but their compass in all of this is, what is the for good? What is the societal impact? It's not to make a buck. It's not just to make a buck. There will be a nice consequence of it. But what problem are you solving for society? And I'm just blown away by the things that they are doing in this course.
I can imagine, because young people don't know that there are things that are impossible. I remember
that helps.
It does. If you want something, if you want to solve a problem, ask a 20-year-old who doesn't know it can't be solved.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I do think that is the wonderful things about youth, the sense of invincibility and the fact that, well, surely there is an answer.
And that's why I love teaching.
I can imagine that's why you
I
love
want to
teaching.
hang around with people that have ideas rather than say, no, it can be done.
Right. And they're like, yeah, sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
So as you move forward, how are you impacted by technology? You were talking about the big tech companies. So obviously, some of us started out with flip phones. Actually, I had a bag phone in my car that I plugged into my to my cigarette lighter. So that was like the original mobile phone, was like this thing that was the size of a brick. And we went to flip phones, and now we're at smartphones. But the big technology giants do sort of put tools out there. And then we have to react to that by learning how to use the iPhone, or we have to learn how to use apps that are created for these. How is that going to work as you're teaching people about AI? Do the platforms matter? Do you see that there will be some other layer that comes along that we're not expecting, that then we have to react to how it's changed AI itself?
Yeah, that's actually it's a wonderful point. And that's a message that I'm trying to relate to folks, that we can't keep playing catch up. There was GPT 3.5, then GPT 4, then GPT 5, then GPT 5.1, and you learned just how to prompt GPT 4, and then nothing works anymore in 5.1, right? Because they keep changing it. But what will stay is foundational literacy. I think that's where we should invest. I'm a very big believer in it. We need to make sure that we figure out what are those pillars, what are those critical skills that will never change, that will always be needed, right? We used to talk about foundational computational principles, computational literacy, right? Things that stay, no matter, how the field evolves. And so that's where I believe we need to invest. Now, do we need to also teach folks a little bit about the technology of the age? Yes, because when you're in the workforce, you're using what the tool is out there. But if you have the right background, right, you understand beneath the layers, then you are more able to evolve. You don't get confused by any technology. You understand, oh, I had an Ericsson, now it's a T-Mobile. All right, you expect some behavior to be preserved. There are folks that say, well, things are moving, they're moving too fast. They are and they aren't. They look like they're moving too fast, but in terms of capabilities, they're not moving that fast. I have students in my class that they did a project. We put to the test all the chatbots. Can they reason or not? So the student's job was to compile a set of reasoning tasks, and they came out at the end and said, nope, they can't reason. These things can't reason. They're very good mimickers, but they can't reason. So they learned that for themselves. So I'm a very big believer in, let's sit down and figure out what are those core critical skills that will stand the test of time, foundational literacy, and let's invest and give folks those skills that will be durable skills. I believe that is the winning formula.
Oh, I would agree with you. Had an interesting conversation with some young people who were in the chambers today talking to me about teaching English in Japan. There's a JET program, and I know many, many, many students. A lot of them go to UVA. I don't know why, but they go to
Mason.
But these UVA graduates all get into this program where they go to Japan and teach English for a year, and they all love it. My stepdaughter did the same thing.
It's very popular. One of my students did that too.
Right, and they love this, right? But then I was saying today, Apple came out with these earbuds that translate. like in real time. And I'm like, it makes me wonder, with a product like that, you can put in earbuds, and I don't even know what languages, I haven't tried them out, but they can actually translate language in real time. I said, does it make you wonder if at some point there won't be programs where college students, after they graduate, go and teach English in a foreign country? Maybe that won't be necessary anymore because there will be an earbud or some device that you don't need someone to teach you the language. Maybe you don't even need to learn the language, or maybe you're going to learn the language because you have this technology that is going to help you. I mean, I wonder about, because they're already here. I mean, these things are already here. They're new. It's one company, it's one product.
Yeah.
But what if we can solve the language problem? Does it mean we don't need language teachers?
I don't believe that. Though I have to say, so I can flip that on its head and say, why even learn a foreign language, right? My kids these days. I say, well, you need to learn this language so that you can talk to grandma. Like, why? Like, she can use ChatGPT, or she can translate it on the spot, right?
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And there I am trying to refresh my German in Duolingo. So I do believe that there are some things that we'll do just because I want to learn this. The computer can do this for me, but I want to learn it because it's part of my experience. I want that experience. For the students in Japan, teaching the language is a very nice consequence, I think. But what do they take out of it at the end? Have you asked them? Right. It's the cultural immersion, right?
100%.
It's the connection with people. And I think that is the trick in everything, the human connection. There will be a point where the machines may be able to do a lot of the things that we're doing. Why do you plant flowers in your garden?
Oh my gosh!
Why?
And I love to. And
You
I
enjoy the process.
I love to garden.
Right?
And it is zen. It is
Right.
getting your hands in the dirt.
Right.
And it's planting a seed.
So there
and
are things
watching
that
it.
I believe we will still be doing.
Tangible. Yes.
Right. The right question to ask is, what is the mode in which we should use these tools to augment our experience rather than to replace something that we find critical and we value because it gives us joy and that we want to retain. And I think that folks might look at this and say, well, it's a very scary situation to find yourselves in. I would say, actually, it's a very interesting question to ask. We have the privilege to think through what the answer should be because we've taken it for granted, right? But now if you're challenged and you're thinking, what is something uniquely human that we want to do? What is it that keeps us human? I have to tell you, I love teaching my class. Could there be things that the chatbots could be doing better than me? Possibly. But I still think because I'm there, because I'm interacting, I'm giving much more to these kids. They're growing, they're developing, right? So they're getting skills that they're not even realizing that they're getting because they're contextualized. They're in a 3D environment. We're in the same physical space, face to face.
Well, and that is the best possible way to end a show on artificial intelligence, is to talk about the humanness of our experience and the fact that you can't replace human connection.
Absolutely.
So, yes, that is the perfect. Thank you so much, Amarda.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us here tonight. Go out and learn more about artificial intelligence.